Good afternoon, and welcome to this, the first in a series of new lectures presented by the Associate Student Speakers Program. I'm Art Levine, this year's program chairman. This afternoon, we welcome to UCLA Mr. Mark Lane, lawyer and author of the current bestseller, Rush to Judgment, a critique of the Warren Commission's inquiry into the murders of the late President Kennedy, Officer Tippit, and Lee Harvey Oswald. With this publication, as well as other lecture appearances and writings, Mr. Lane has put himself in the center of one of the most controversial questions in contemporary legal analysis. Following his presentation, you are all welcome to the adjacent men's lounge, where we will have an informal coffee hour for questions and answers. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Mark Lane.
Thank you. The issuance of the Warren Commission report found us involved in an experience in contemporary America unlike any previous experience. The report was issued in September 1964, some 10 months after the assassination in Dallas of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The very day the report was issued, although it was nothing more than a one-volume report which purportedly was a fair summation of some 26 volumes of evidence which had not yet been published. The very day the report was issued, it was hailed by the media in this country as being an authoritative document which answered every question and resolved every doubt. But it was nothing more than a summation of evidence which at that time no one could see. And one wonders today how it was possible for such responsible publications as the New York Times, for one example, to hail the report as being conclusive even before the evidence was released. Then the 26 volumes of evidence were released, some 2 months later. On the very day that the evidence was released, Anthony Lewis, then the Washington correspondent for the New York Times, wrote an article 3 hours after he had received the 26 volumes of evidence, in which he said, "The material contained in the 26 volumes proves conclusively that Earl Warren and his colleagues were correct in stating that Oswald, the one lone unhappy man, was the lone assassin." Since it took me a bit more than a year and a half to read all of the evidence in the 26 volumes, I've always wondered, assuming that I do read more slowly than Mr. Lewis, I've always wondered how it was possible for Mr. Lewis to summarize all of the material in 3 hours so that he could report to the American people precisely what the meaning of all of it was. I think this, first, the immediate response of the media to the report before the evidence could be seen, and then before it could be examined, the assurances that the evidence supported the report in every respect, was indicative of a very serious problem which existed at that time in America and which exists at the present time. For when there is no free press, when there is no free media, radio and television reporters, seeking to uncover information, when there is instead a consensus from above imposed upon the American people in so basic a question, we have reached a sad state of affairs in our nation. Now, I've just come now from a meeting here with the Los Angeles press in a room in the building. Now, I would say that the Neanderthal position taken still by many of the representatives of the press is indicative of the fact that this problem still exists in America and still is a serious problem. For 2.5 years, not a single network, radio or television program in America permitted one word of questioning about the validity of the Warren Commission report to be broadcast. 2.5 years, not one word in this country on a single network radio or television program. And I visited during that period of time 14 countries throughout Europe. And there is not a single country that I visited where there was not a vast and deep interest in this case, and where radio and television network coverage was not immediately available, except in our own country, except here where the media said no. The government has said Oswald did it, and did it alone, and there can be no questioning of that edict. And that, I suggest, is a dangerous situation, and one which unfortunately still prevails. But during that 2.5 years, I crisscrossed this country on many occasions, because there was one community where it was possible to have a dialogue on the question of the death of President Kennedy and the Warren Commission report, and that is the campuses of America. And I'm happy to be back here again. It's like coming home to come to America and come to a college campus where it is possible to talk with people who are interested in facts. Now, you may have noticed in reading the papers, yesterday's Los Angeles Times as a good example, that members of the Warren Commission have broken their vow of silence taken when they were appointed and are now beginning to talk about the case. Not about the facts, but they're beginning to attack those who disagree with the Commission's conclusions. But even that is a step forward. At least they're beginning to talk. And why did that take place? Because 2 polls recently taken, one by Lou Harris and one by the Washington Post, showed that the overwhelming majority of the American people today say they do not believe the essential conclusion of the Warren Commission report. They do not believe that one lone man was the assassin of President Kennedy. And now the members of the Commission, for the first time, are beginning to speak. And what do they say? Congressman Ford and Mr. Dulles, former director of the CIA, removed from that position by President Kennedy. These 2 gentlemen have now spoken out and have said, quite frankly, that they consider it to be a disservice to the memory of President Kennedy to challenge the Warren Commission report. I suggest that those who professed concern for the things for which President Kennedy lived have shown, in fact, a callous indifference to the manner in which he died. And if there is a disservice that has been rendered, and I believe there has been one rendered, it is a disservice to the truth and to the memory of the President, rendered by the Warren Commission in issuing a fraudulent report about the manner of his death in the first place, and secondly, because the members of the Commission have now insisted upon silence and obedience to their edict. Here we have the final story about what happened in Dallas. It's called The Truth About Kennedy Assassination. It's the U.S. News and World Report, which of course presents nothing but the truth, generally. And it carries in it an interview with Arlen Specter. Mr. Specter is one of the members of the Commission, one of the lawyers for the Commission, who played an important role in developing the most imaginative theory, which the Commission considered and then accepted, and that is that one bullet hit the President in the back of the neck, lower portion of the neck, exited through the front of his throat, leaving behind what the doctor said was an entrance wound. Then the bullet continued on, and to explain the fact that Governor Connally appeared to be reacting 1.8 seconds after the President was shot, the bullet evidently hung there in midair for approximately that period of time, and then proceeded on, entering the governor's back, smashing his 5th rib, exiting from his 5th rib, fracturing his right wrist, and then entering into his left thigh. If you don't believe that, you cannot believe the Warren Commission report, because that story is essential to an acceptance of the Commission's report, because there just was not time, even by the Commission's own reckoning, for an extra bullet to have been fired. It was that one bullet which did all of the damage to Governor Connally and struck President Kennedy as well. And Mr. Specter is the imaginative district attorney of Philadelphia, who was counsel for the commission, who developed that most inventive theory. And in the interview, I'm just going to pass upon some of the highlights which Mr. Spector has touched upon in his valiant defense of the Warren Commission report. Let me say that Mr. Spector has been invited to debate with me on national radio and television networks now for some months. The Today Show and a dozen other network programs and scores of other local radio and television programs, or network and syndicated radio and television programs. He has declined to do so, always stating that he is not a spokesman for the Commission. He could not speak for the Commission, but he insists upon giving individual interviews which cannot be answered to the press regarding his defense of the Commission report. First question, which commends itself to interviewers for U.S. News and World Report and to Mr. Spector, is this one. Why is it that Dr. Humes, the medical commander of the Navy, who performed the autopsy upon the President's body and who drafted an autopsy draft report, which I think all of the evidence shows reflected what did happen in terms of his autopsy, but then later drafted another report, why is it that he burned his original draft autopsy notes? Rather substantial question, because of course they were not his notes. They belonged to the people of the United States. And he was a commander in the Navy and of course had the responsibility to preserve those historic documents. I quote Mr. Spector in explaining why it is Commander Humes burned the notes. He explained that Commander Humes had never performed an autopsy on a president before. He was probably out on a house call during the Lincoln assassination, therefore didn't have the relevant required experience. Now, as why it is that the doctors in the Parkland Hospital said that the wound in the president's throat was an entrance wound, which would be most inconvenient, of course, for the government's case, since the president had driven past the book depository building, was looking to the front when the bullet struck him in the throat and left behind an entrance wound. It would be very difficult to explain how Oswald was able to shoot the president from the front, from the back. So the doctors at Parkland Hospital were all wrong. And Mr. Spector explains why it is. He said that the commission saw to it that tests were conducted whereby a goat skin was placed over a gelatin block and bullets from the Italian Carcano, which is the rifle that the police finally decided was found on the 6th floor of a book depository building, after first saying it was a German Mauser of a different caliber from the one they ended up with. In any event, bullets were fired from the Italian Carcano through this substance. And, said the commission, this test proved that you could not tell the difference between an entrance wound and an exit wound, although doctors all over the world take a very different position. They say an entrance wound is a small, neat puncture wound, almost just about the size of the bullet. Sometimes it, in fact, appears to be even smaller than the diameter of the bullet, because the tissue tends to move around it after the bullet has passed through. An exit wound is a larger wound. It is not round. It is stellate in shape. It is irregular and considerably larger. Mr. Spector said that this is the reason the doctors could not tell the difference, and I quote from U.S. News and World Report. The characteristics of the entry and exit marks on the goatskin show it is not possible to tell conclusively whether the point of exit on the goatskin is different from a point of entrance. This is, in fact, the Commission's own exhibit, photographs of the goatskin. The wounds marked entrance wounds are small, neat, round wounds, which exactly meet the qualifications in size and every other respect of what the doctors described regarding the wound in President Kennedy's throat. That which are called exit wounds on the Commission's own sheet are 2 to 3 times as large, are irregular, and are stellate, precisely what the doctors in Parkland Hospital said are exit wounds. This proves that you cannot tell the difference between an entrance wound and an exit wound. Now, of course, there are some very important documents which should be examined. After all, photographs of the president's body were taken in the Bethesda Hospital by the request of Commander Humes. He said that they might be required to assist him in determining the path of the missiles as they coursed through the president's body. Photographs and x-rays, but the photographs were removed by the Secret Service from the autopsy room before they were developed. And to this day, Commander Humes has never been permitted to see the photographs. Not one member of the commission ever saw the photographs, and evidently not one member of the commission ever saw the x-rays as well. Mr. Spector concedes, page 53, U.S. News and World Report. To the best of my knowledge, the commission did not see any photographs or x-rays. It wasn't necessary. All they had to do was listen to the doctor, says Mr. Spector. But of course, a doctor can change his position after he burns his notes. It's more difficult to change the photographs and the x-rays, and they have not yet been seen by anyone. What did the commission do? It decided it wanted to look at something to depict the wounds, and so Commander Humes asked an artist who had not examined the president's body and who had not even seen the photographs or the x-rays to draw a picture based upon Dr. Humes's verbal statements, based upon his recollection, his notes as to what had taken place way back months before. And 3 drawings were prepared by an artist who explained that he was rushed through them and explained, therefore, they were inaccurate. Well, as soon as the commission heard that they were inaccurate, it solemnly accepted them as evidence, of course, and never examined the photographs and never examined the x-rays. Mr. Spector goes on to state that the rifle, the Mannlicher Carcano, is a rifle which was used by Oswald, and proves that this, in fact, is the rifle which Oswald used, because he makes reference to a picture which was published, you probably saw it back in, I think, February of '64, on the cover of Life magazine. However, the FBI rifle expert who examined the photograph said he could not look at that picture and say that the rifle which was in Oswald's hands was the Mannlicher Carcano, but nevertheless, Mr. Spector, even at this late date, is telling the American people that proof that Oswald owned the Mannlicher Carcano is the photograph showing Oswald holding a rifle identified as being the Mannlicher Carcano, which was used, and that is just a flat falsehood, because the experts never even told the commission that. What about that photograph? When we went before the commission, we pointed out there was a great discrepancy in some of the material in the photograph. The shadow from Oswald's nose fell directly down in the middle of his mouth, neither going to the right nor the left, indicating the sun was over his head when the picture was taken, but the shadow from his body fell off sharply to the right and back, indicating the sun was in front of him to the left when the picture of his body was taken. And a number of photographic experts around the world, and a number here in Los Angeles as well, examined the photograph and said that it was an obvious forgery, that Oswald's head had been superimposed upon that photograph. And we didn't know it then when we were raising that question. In fact, when I raised it here, before the 26 volumes had been published. But after they were published, we discovered for the first time in the reports of the FBI, Secret Service, and Dallas police officers who had questioned Oswald while he was in custody, that they showed him the photograph, and he said, "My head has been superimposed on that photograph by the Dallas police, and I know enough about photography," he had worked for a photographer at one time, he said, "so that when the trial comes up, I will prove that that is a doctored photograph." But of course there was no trial and no opportunity to prove anything about that photograph at all. This question has been raised throughout Europe as well. The Sunday Times of London, one of the leading publications in the world, publishes on this coming Sunday an 11-page special supplement in which it says it cannot accept the Warren Commission report, and based upon its own examination of the evidence. And what it does is it publishes the picture of Oswald's head and somebody's body with the disparity of the shadows. And I must say that when we pointed this out to the commission had an FBI agent go to the roof of the FBI building, and he stood holding a rifle, his hand as if he was holding the rifle. And his stance was exactly the same as Oswald. And they did duplicate, I must confess, the shadow from Oswald's body, exactly. As to whether or not they also duplicated the shadow from the nose, which came directly down, we cannot be sure, because the FBI removed the head of the man before the photograph was given to the commission and published, with the statement being made that, quote, "well, there's nothing pertinent about the head anyway." The Sunday Times has published those two photographs, will publish those two photographs, along with the results of its own photographic staff, to duplicate the photograph and the disparity of the shadows, with the statement that it is impossible that it cannot be done. Now we come to one of the basic questions in the case, and that is that the witnesses present in Dealey Plaza said that the shots did not come from the book depository building. This is a photograph of the area. The limousine came here across Main Street, up Euston, down Elm. This is the book depository building. The commission said that all of the shots came from here. Yet 2/3 of the witnesses, 58 out of the 90 witnesses in the area, almost 2/3, who said that they could make an estimate as to the origin of the shots, said that the shots did not come from here, but instead came from here, from behind a wooden fence on the top of a grassy hill. This question was put to Mr. Spector, page 55. It was asked how it is possible that all of the witnesses were wrong. And he states the witnesses are wrong because the auditory response to the origin of shots is totally unreliable. And then he went on to state that there were police officers, quote, there were officers on the overpass who had a good view of the grassy knoll and they saw no shooting from the knoll. This is where the overpass is. That statement is a flat falsehood in a couple of respects. There were officers who had a good view. There were, in fact, 2 police officers on the overpass and a number of railroad employees. One was facing over this way, looking in the other direction when the shots were fired, testified he had not the faintest idea as to what took place because he was directly facing away from the Dealey Plaza area. The other man was over the overpass. I've been on that overpass many times, and I've interviewed on film and on tape witnesses who were on the overpass, and I interviewed them when they were up there as well. It is impossible to see over the wooden fence or to see the area behind the wooden fence from the overpass. And when Mr. Spector tells us that the officers on the overpass had a good view of that area, he is either deliberately making a false statement or he is showing his total ignorance regarding the basic geography of the area where the assassination took place, and I do not know which is worse, from one of the chief investigators and attorneys for the Warren Commission. Now, what did the men on the overpass see? The first man who testified who was on the overpass was S.M. Holland, the railroad supervisor, who said he was asked to go up there by Dallas police officers because Mr. Holland, the witness, had himself been a Dallas deputy sheriff for some 17 years. They asked him to go up on the overpass and see to it that no one other than railroad employees be allowed up on the overpass. He said, when the shots were fired, I looked toward that wooden fence on the grassy knoll. I knew shots, at least one shot came from behind there. I heard it, and I looked there, and I saw a puff of white smoke come from above the wooden fence, just under the trees, where the assassin had just fired. And he said, and other men who were on the railroad bridge with me know that exactly to be true because a number of us ran over there. When the commission heard that, it evidently decided not to call a single other railroad employee who was up on that overpass, who had a magnificent view of the whole area, not behind the fence, of course, but of the whole Dealey Plaza area. As good a view, perhaps, as anyone in Dealey Plaza. And they never called the others. But we went down to Dallas, and we questioned the other 6 men on film and on tape. And we have their statements, and 7 men, including Holland, who were on that railroad bridge, said that when they heard the shots, they looked toward the wooden fence, because that is where the shots came from, and they saw 1 or more puffs of white smoke come from behind there. What did the commission say about Holland? The commission used Holland's testimony to prove that no shots could have come from behind the wooden fence. Said the commission, Holland, for example, ran behind the fence immediately after the shots were fired and saw no one back there. Therefore, his testimony indicates that no shots could have come from there. I showed that to Mr. Holland when I interviewed him, and he said on film and on tape, the commission has distorted the whole force and the whole meaning of my testimony. They never asked me how long it took to get back there. How can they say I went there immediately after the shots were fired? That whole area was a sea of automobiles, he said. The cars were parked bumper to bumper. It took me at least 2 to 2.5 minutes to get behind the area. And he said there could have been a dozen people back there firing who could have escaped unobserved by me before I was able to get there. The commission never asked the question, but it reached its hasty conclusion nevertheless. Behind the area is a wooden tower, and in that tower was Lee J. Bowers, the railroad towerman. Mr. Bowers testified before the commission. He said to them, at the time the shots were fired, something took place behind that wooden fence, something which I could not identify, but something which attracted my attention to the fence, something that, and before he had finished that sentence, and perhaps he was going to tell them what he thought it was that attracted his attention. Before he could finish the sentence, you read the testimony, something that, dash, new question by commission counsel. And the commission lawyer never went back to the question. And that's the way Mr. Bowers was excused. I went to Dallas in April of this year, in March, and I questioned Mr. Bowers. And I said, what happened to this point? And he said, the commission lawyer evidently did not want to hear the facts, didn't want to know why I looked at the fence. But I'll tell you why I looked at the fence. Something attracted my attention there. I can't describe it specifically, but it was a puff of smoke or a flash of light just when the shots were fired. And that's information which the commission never secured because the commission never wanted to find out what it was that attracted Mr. Bowers' attention to the area. Now we have photographs taken, films taken. Let's start with the photograph. Standing right over here was Mary Moorman, a witness. She took a picture of the presidential limousine as it came down Elm Street. Just as she took the picture, she said, and in the background of the picture was the book depository building. Just as she took the picture, she said, a shot was fired. It was a Polaroid camera. The picture was quickly developed. She glanced at it. She said it showed the whole book depository building. It showed the 6th floor window of the book depository building at the very moment that the shots were fired. The picture, she said, was taken from her by a Dallas deputy sheriff. There is no reference anywhere in the Warren Commission report itself to this incident or to the fact that Miss Moorman was even there or took a picture. But if you pick up the 26 volumes, or the appropriate volume, you will find a statement by a Dallas deputy sheriff saying that he did take the picture from Miss Moorman and described the picture as one which showed the very window at which the gunman allegedly sat when the shots were fired. And he said, I've given the photograph to a Secret Service man, and the Secret Service agent filed a statement, which is published in the 26 volumes, in which he too describes the picture. A picture of the 6th floor window from which Oswald allegedly fired at the very time he was firing. What could be a more dramatic piece of evidence? It should have been on the cover of the Warren Commission report if it showed Oswald up there with his trusty German Mauser Italian Carcano firing. But the commission never published the picture. The commission never made reference to the picture. Where is the evidence? A lot of the documentary evidence is in the National Archives, and by order of President Lyndon Baines Johnson, may not be seen until September in the year 2039. The director of the National Archives was asked why that was so, and he said, because 75 years from the issuance of the report was chosen, because it is presumed that no one alive today will then be alive, and therefore no one now alive can in any way be harmed by the revelations of that material which is in the archives. Well, who can be harmed other than the assassins of President Kennedy by the release of the information regarding the death of President Kennedy? So the photographs. That photograph is not available. At the time the assassination took place, during the time the shots were fired, standing over here was Abraham Zapruder. Mr. Zapruder was an amateur cameraman, and he had with him a camera, 8mm camera, and he took photographs. And the commission has broken them down into various frames and published almost every frame. Almost, I say, but not every one. A number of frames have been deleted, and there is an indication that four of the frames were deleted because possibly they show that a bullet struck a wooden sign, which was here. Because frame 207 is published, and then frame 208, 9, 10, and 11, which follow it, showing the sign possibly after the bullet struck it, have been deleted. But the next frame, 212, shows lines of stress coming from the lower left-hand corner of the sign, and they change, they quiver, they get larger and smaller in the succeeding photographs until they disappear. One of the lawyers here, one of the lawyers for the commission, Professor Liebler, who's here, I believe, now, was concerned about this because one of the members of our Citizens Committee of Inquiry here in California raised this question with them, because these were the relevant frames which were deleted, in addition to the fact that the sign which was there has been completely removed, and at the present time we can't even find out what happened to the sign, but it has been removed. And he wrote a letter, Mr. Liebler did, to the commission, to Mr. Rankin, to others, and Mr. Redlick, one of the active persons for the commission, wrote back, in which he made a number of points showing that it was not important that these be deleted. He said probably they were deleted because they were overexposed or underexposed or not relevant or something like that probably. And he said anyway, those lines of stress can't make any difference because those lines of stress would only take place if the bullets came from here and struck the back of the sign. He said, we know that couldn't be because all of the evidence shows that Oswald was the lone assassin, and he was on the 6th floor of the book depository building. So we keep on coming back to the commission's basic presumption before the case began. Oswald did it, and did it alone. In fact, at the very first press conference held for the commission by Mr. Rankin, general counsel to the commission, he said, we have established 6 panels, and through these 6 panels, all of the evidence will be filtered and will be gathered and will be presented to the commission. These are the 6 panels. Number 1, where was Lee Harvey Oswald and what did he do on November 22nd? Number 2, Oswald's background. Number 3, Oswald in the Marine Corps and Oswald in the Soviet Union. Rather strange juxtaposition for that panel. 4, Jack Ruby's background. 5, how did Ruby kill Oswald? The 6th and final panel, what precautions were taken to protect the president in Dallas that day? I would suggest that the commission might have considered the establishment of a 7th panel to which evidence might have been gathered and presented to the commission as well. It might have been given a title something like, Who Killed President Kennedy? Unless the commission was certain that through panel number 1, what did Lee Oswald do on November 22nd, it would receive all of the answers to its question. Now, it has been said that the commission was rushed and hurried. They didn't have sufficient opportunity to question all of the witnesses, to amass all of the evidence. If Oswald had lived to face trial, without the expenditure of $1 million, which is what the commission spent, more than $1 million, without the whole federal police, the FBI and the Secret Service, the local police in any city in this country, this was a relatively uncomplicated, in terms of the facts, a relatively uncomplicated murder case. The investigation could have easily been completed in 6 weeks, and the trial could have been completed within perhaps an additional 4 or 5 weeks, probably at the very most. So within 3 months from the time of the death, there could have easily been a conclusion. The commission took 10 months, and it has been said that they did not have enough time. Well, they never would have enough time for the kind of investigation which they conducted. They never called the majority of the witnesses to the assassination. They didn't call the most important witnesses to the murder of Officer Tippit. They didn't call the majority of the witnesses to the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack Ruby in the basement of the Dallas police station while Oswald was being protected by 70 Dallas police officers. But it is not to say they called no witnesses. After Dr. Revelo P. Oliver, who recently resigned, you may know, from the John Birch Society because he thought it was a bit too liberal. After Revelo Oliver had published an article in American Opinion, the unofficial organ of the Birch Society, in which he said there are several possibilities which we must consider regarding why it is the president was assassinated. There is the possibility, the theory which must be considered, that Kennedy was part of the international communist conspiracy, that he had promised to turn America over to the international communist movement, and that he had finally decided to turn American, and that's why he was eliminated by the conspiracy. He said that is a theory which must be given serious thought. However, Dr. Oliver said, but I reject that theory because there is no evidence whatsoever showing that President Kennedy had planned to turn American. He went on further to state that it is a sad thing to observe that the American people lament the death of President Kennedy, but did not lament the death of Adolf Hitler. And after Professor Oliver had written his articles, the Warren Commission gathered this basic important material and published it in the 26 volumes. Over 100 pages are devoted to the rantings of Dr. Oliver. But that was not enough. Then the commission called him as a witness. He was in Illinois when the shots were fired. Called him as a witness. And he went on hour after hour after hour. And I questioned Mr. Jenner, who was counsel for the commission who examined Mr. Oliver. I said, what was the basis for that examination, Mr. Jenner? And he said, do you deny that I subjected him to incisive cross-examination? Well, I would deny it because I read the cross-examination. It seemed to be most respectful, as a matter of fact, remarkably respectful under the circumstances. Much more respectful, I would say, than the examination to which I was treated by Mr. Warren and the other members of the commission questioning me. But let's say that it was incisive cross-examination. By those standards, one could empty out every lunatic asylum in America and subject the inmates to incisive cross-examination and state that one had made a contribution to the finding of the facts. Or take the fact that the commission never published the photograph of the window, never published the photographs in the x-rays, never published 4 of the most important frames. But what did they publish? The dental chart showing the condition of Jack Ruby's mother's teeth in the year 1937, which I suggest would not even have been relevant if the charge was that Ruby bit Oswald to death. And the commission was interested in other aspects of the case as well. Go to the National Archives and you will see 35 files listed as basic source materials relied upon by the Warren Commission conducting this investigation. They all deal with me. Every single time I spoke, anywhere in America, right here at UCLA, there were FBI agents present in the auditorium, tape recording every single word I said. And the archives are chock full of my speech, the same old dull speech, tape recording after tape recording after tape recording. In fact, 3 agents of the FBI wrote a report which was submitted to the commission after I left San Francisco, in which they seemed to be somewhat complaining about the task which had been assigned to them. They said, Mr. Lane spoke. We closed 7 reels of tape showing what it was he said at these 3 speaking engagements in San Francisco. We should point out that it's identical with the testimony that he gave to the commission and with the article that he had written and with his previous speech. So this was evidently becoming a rather boring prospect for the members of the FBI. And if they are here today, I just should remind you that it is not my responsibility that you are here. I would prefer that you were out in the field trying to find out who killed President Kennedy. I prefer that you stop following me around the country. I should add this, however, that the scrutiny to which I was subjected is nothing compared with the scrutiny to which Joachim Justin was subjected. Mr. Justin wrote a book which was critical of the Warren Commission a long time ago, while the commission was still in operation, as a matter of fact. One of the basic documents now in the National Archives, listed as a basic source material relied upon by the Warren Commission, is a file submitted to the Warren Commission by the CIA, which is a file prepared by the Gestapo in November 1937, dealing with the political background of Joachim Justin, so that the commission, no doubt, once being aware of the kind of person that Joachim Justin was, at least as seen by the Gestapo, so that the condition could evaluate his book. I must say that I don't consider myself to be very naive. If I was naive 3 years ago, and I don't think I was too naive then, I am much less naive today. But nevertheless, I cannot say anything other than every time I think of Earl Warren picking up a Gestapo file to determine the political reliability of one of the commission critics, chills run up and down my spine. Yes, the Commission had time for all of this activity. It just never could find time to investigate the basic facts regarding the assassination of the President. I'll give you one more example of photographs, which were treated in a most unusual fashion. Frame 313. I know that some of you have to go to other classes, and please feel free to go whenever it's time. I know that the Commission, of course, published Frame 313, which showed the result of the bullet striking the President's head, showed the impact, and said the Commission, Frame 313 is the frame when the bullet struck the President's head, the fatal shot was fired, and that one conclusion is an accurate one. It is undeniable by examining the photograph. One can see the President's head exploding at frame 313. Frame 314 is the frame, of course, which shows 1/18th of a second later, and frame 315 shows the President's position 1/18th of a second after that. Each frame is taken to the rate of 18.3 seconds per frame. Just examine frame 314 and 315, and there is undeniable evidence of the direction from which the bullet came. Because either the bullet which struck the President's head, he was leaning forward, and struck him in the throat, he was leaning forward when the bullet struck his head at frame 313. Just look at frame 314 and 315 and see which way his body was driven by that bullet. Unless the laws of physics were repealed that day in Dallas, this is absolute proof as to the origin of the shots. If you look at them the way the Commission published them in its volume 18, you will see that the President, compare 314 to 315, is driven forward. In other words, the evidence would show that he was struck from the back. But some very active experts of the Citizens Committee out here in California examined frames 314 and 315 and were able to prove that the two frames had been mislabeled and reversed in publication in the Commission volume. Unless there be any question about the accuracy of these photographic experts, and I would not ask you to rely upon them any more than I would ask you to rely upon the Commission statement, a letter was sent to J. Edgar Hoover in which he was confronted with the absolute proof. He wrote back, and we have a copy of the letter. The letter says, "It is true, frames 314 and 315 were mislabeled and transposed in the publication of the Warren Commission evidence." He went on to say this was an error, and thank you for calling this error to our attention. And maybe it was an error, maybe not. There's a photograph taken by a retired Air Force Major, Phil Willis. It shows the front of the book depository building 5 minutes after the shots were fired. In the right-hand corner of the photograph, standing right about over here in front of the book depository building, is a man who bears a remarkable resemblance to Jack Ruby. In fact, Mr. Willis was called upon by agents of the FBI, the gentleman who took the picture, and was told that's a valuable picture. It shows Jack Ruby at the assassination scene 5 minutes after the shots were fired. But, of course, the Commission, which was to find that Ruby acted alone, Oswald acted alone, just lone nuts running around Dallas, said that Ruby was not at the assassination scene at all. Now, what were they going to do with this photograph which showed a picture of Jack Ruby? When I was down in Dallas recently, I showed it to Wes Wise, who was a reporter for KRLD, which is the CBS television outlet in Dallas, a man who has known Jack Ruby for 5 years, in fact testified at the Ruby trial regarding some of Ruby's activities on November 23rd. And I said on the air, "Who is that man, Wes?" He said, "That's Jack Ruby. No question about it." Here we have a picture of Jack Ruby in front of the book depository building 5 minutes after the shots were fired, and the Commission's statement that Ruby was not there. There's only one way to handle that, and the Commission found it. They cropped the photograph and removed Jack Ruby, or the man who looked like Jack Ruby, from the photograph, then took the cropped photograph and enlarged it so it would be the same size as the other photographs that had published, and then published it, neatly cropped. And this is the way the Commission's evidence was handled from the beginning to the end. We are now, last moment of our remarks, we are now in what I think is a new stage in reference to the Warren Commission report and efforts to find out who killed our president. The period of no debate has passed. Now the majority of the American people can no longer accept the Warren report. Now it is possible to discuss these matters in the United States. And now I've come back home, as I said earlier, to the college campuses to propose here for the first time that which I will propose on every college campus that I can visit in the weeks ahead, and everywhere else I go as well. That there be a massive petition campaign initiated at once on every college campus in America, directed to Lyndon Baines Johnson, telling him we want the National Archives opened up, that we are not content, we will not be satisfied to wait until the year 2039 to find out what happened in Dallas on November 22nd, saying that we want the evidence, the hard physical evidence, some of which is in the hands of the Dallas police at the present time, placed in the archives and made available to independent experts and scholars so that it can be examined, and that we want a new investigation because we want to know what took place down there in Dallas that day, and we are concerned that the government has told us one untruth after another about the events that day. And I suggest that this petition campaign begin now, and that on November 22nd, as many of us who can, journey to the White House to see President Johnson and to present to him a petition from as many Americans as who are interested in this question. And I think possibly in that way, I should say that a member of the United States Congress, a Republican from New York City, in fact, the man who replaced Mayor Lindsay in the United States Congress, has now introduced a bill calling for a joint congressional investigation into the activities of the Warren Commission. I should suggest that our petition should support that proposed legislation. And instead of the secret trial conducted by the Commission, that there be public hearings. I think only in that way it will be possible to know why our president was killed and why the government seems to be so eager to keep the facts from us. And I ask for your help in this effort to make this information available to us all. Thank you.
On behalf of all of us, once again, we'd like to thank Mr. Lane. The coffee hour will begin in a few moments next door, at which time the best-selling book, which contains an expansion of what Mr. Lane has been saying today, will be on display. Right next door. If I could have your attention, please. There is no doubt from the turnout that we have here today that certainly the remarks that were made have stirred us mentally, as the college community should offer. And we'll try to get to as many of your questions, comments as possible. Please try to keep them in the questioning frame as opposed to the commenting frame if they're going to be long, so that Mr. Lane will take a few notes on your comments and try to answer you as directly as possible. It's hard for me to see everyone. If you have a question, please place your hand up and wave dramatically. Yes.
May I have the first question?
Yeah.
Would anyone here who is interested in participating in the petition campaign or other activities, what will be shortly, I hope, a Citizens Committee of Inquiry here at UCLA, please sign and give an indication on here as to how we can contact you.
Hi, the first question right over here. Would you introduce yourself, sir?
Yes. May I have the microphone, please?
Well, can you be heard? Can this gentleman be heard?
Thank you. I'll introduce myself. I understood that I was going to be introduced when I came over, but I guess maybe most of you know who I am anyway. You don't? I flattered myself. My name is Wesley J. Liebler, Jim Liebler. I'm on the faculty of the law school here. I was one of the 14 assistant counsels to the Warren Commission that conducted the investigation into the assassination of President Kennedy and that drafted the Warren Report. When I learned yesterday that Mr. Lane was going to appear here at UCLA, I requested the students responsible for this program to contact Mr. Lane and ask him to meet me on the platform in the other room just an hour ago. Mr. Lane, in all fairness to Mr. Lane was asked here to come and make a speech, and he stood on that position and declined to share the platform with me. So I came here to speak to you after Mr. Lane's speech. Mr. Lane issued a press conference this morning in which he challenges Commissioners Ford and Dulles to a public debate on the issues involved in the Warren Report and the investigation that the Warren Commission conducted. I was surprised, in view of the issuance of that press conference, that Mr. Lane wasn't willing to meet me in a public debate in the other room, but perhaps we can have that now. I want to comment briefly. Pardon? I was told when I came over here that I was going to be given the privilege of making a statement about Mr. Lane's performance, and the question that I'm answering, or that I'm trying to raise, is my view of Mr. Lane's performance as a former member of the staff of the Warren Commission.
During this period, while other students have questions, could you phrase that comment as the form of a question so that we can get to it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Levine. When I came over here, I was told that I'd be given the opportunity to make a statement to present my views. I'm supposed to do so. Now, when the students want to ask questions, I was also told when the students ask questions, they can address them either to Mr. Lane or to me. And if they want to hear my response to anything that Mr. Lane says during the course of this discussion, that I was to have a microphone and was able to give my response. And that's the condition under which I'm here. Mr. Lane in his press release today talks about the responsibility of citizenship. And he indicates that that's the reason why he's engaged in this endeavor in which he's engaged. I suggest to Mr. Lane that the first responsibility of citizenship in this country is to tell the truth. I stood here in this room a few minutes ago and heard him accuse the Warren Commission of deliberately telling one falsehood after another, of in effect, if not directly, attacking the integrity of the commissioners and the lawyers who worked in that commission. I just say again that Mr. Lane's first obligation as a citizen is to tell the truth, and I think it's about time we start. Now, he indicates in the press release that the basic documents in this case have been hidden in the National Archives until September 2039. I assume that Mr. Lane has been to the archives, and I assume that he knows that that statement is not true. The fact of the matter is that the underlying investigative reports, the reports of the investigation that was conducted by the FBI and the Secret Service and the CIA and other investigative branches of the government have been reviewed by those agencies, and they have applied a series of guidelines which are available at the archives or which have been given to the archives to indicate the standards that were brought to bear on which of these documents would be released and which would not. My understanding is that the ones that haven't... Pardon? Wait. The only documents that have not been made available to scholars and to interested citizens in the archives, as I understand at this point, are two basic types. One is a type that reflects personal information about some of the witnesses that is not relevant to any aspect of the investigation. Now, I can give... There's no use in trying to characterize it. I can give you some examples. The FBI developed information, for example, as to regards to the sexual habits of some of the people who were personally involved in this. Now, if those should be made available at this time, you're entitled to that opinion. But the opinion of the Commission and the agencies involved were that if these matters didn't relate to anything that was involved in the investigation, that it was more appropriate not to make these matters public record. There were other documents. For example, the identity of confidential informants has not been released. But every document that the Commission relied on that reflects an investigation of any aspect that was relevant to any conclusions of the report is available in the archives.
Well,
up to this time, there is one.
If I can comment now,
I'm not,
be a question.
But I'm not through. I'm not through.
Mr. Liebler, I'll comment on that aspect of it, and you or anyone else can ask any other question you want, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to this without being given an opportunity to respond. I was invited here to speak. I'm going to accept the courtesy which has been offered to me by the student body, and I'm going to speak.
Checking the debate.
On the question of debate. Now let's go into that. On the question of debate. For almost 3 years, I've traveled up and down this country. I was here before at UCLA. I've been at 85 other college campuses. Where were the commission lawyers?
We're here now, Mr. Lane.
Hold on,
We're here now.
I'm right here. Mr. Liebler, let's
You declined my invitation to
Let's play a
debate.
game called courtesy. You be quiet when I speak, and I'll be quiet when you speak. I have appeared on television with Mr. Liebler. I have sought out and appeared on television with Mr. Jenner, one of the counterparts of senior counsel. Mr. Liebler is one of the junior counsel. I've been on with Mr. Jenner and Mr. Ball, another commission lawyer, and Mr. Griffin. And I'm ready and willing and able to debate anyone, Mr. Liebler, anybody else who has any knowledge or purports to have any knowledge about this case. But I do think that if a student body invites me to speak, I have the right to speak at an invitation. It doesn't mean that wherever I'm invited to speak, it must be transformed into a debate. I would suggest that Mr. Liebler call the hotel that I'm staying at, arrange, if there's a student organization here, a debate on campus someday when it does not coincide with my other commitments, and I will be happy to meet him, I assure you.
Don't you want to discuss it now, Mr. Lane? You've issued a public statement challenging you to debate.
If you will kindly just sit down for a moment, I'm going to respond to each of the points you've made thus far. You've made a number.
You interrupted me. I was speaking, and you interrupted me.
You've asked your question. I can't believe that you conduct your law classes here that way. I should hope not. Now regarding the reports that are in the National Archives. Number one, when last I was at the National Archives, and I must confess I don't go there every week to check up, but when last I was there, which was 3.5 months ago, there were 1,555 documents known as the basic source materials relied upon by the Warren Commission. Now, if in those 1,555, there are many documents dealing with the sex habits of individuals who are peripheral, I don't know why they're called basic source materials relied upon by the Warren Commission. I'm not sure what it is they were investigating, but I thought it was the assassination of the president. Of those 1,555, when I was last at the archives, 570 documents were classified and were not available to anyone, except, I suppose, maybe Mr. Liebler can see them, or agents of the CIA, or those others in government who are associated with the Warren Commission. But an ordinary soul who's written a book or is a lawyer who's investigating the case is not permitted to see it, number one. Number two, in the archives are the minutes of the meetings of the commission members. Very interesting material, possibly. It might show what the commission members were thinking and saying, etc. Not one of those documents is available, all classified and all unavailable. If there were minutes taken, I don't know if there were, but if there were minutes taken of staff meetings as well, and I don't know if they were present because one can't tell from looking at the material in the archives, that's not available either. I talked with one of the assistant chief archivists, deputy archivists, and he indicated to me there were such minutes, he believes, but he knows that material is classified and cannot be seen. Now that material which can be seen, in some cases, is merely a photostatic copy and a poor copy in some cases where you can't even read all of the material. That's a very small minority of the material, but that is a problem which exists with some of the material which has been available. Now Jacqueline Kennedy testified, as you may know. And what person besides Jacqueline Kennedy, what lay person, had a better opportunity to view the wounds that President Kennedy had suffered than Jacqueline Kennedy? After he was shot, she pulled him over. His head remained on her lap for the whole ride to the Parkland Hospital, and she was present as well for part of the time in the emergency room where the president was treated. She showed no reluctance to testify, and she voluntarily made a statement about the wounds which her husband had suffered. That material is in the National Archives, but you can't see that because if you read the report, her testimony, it says, bracket, reference to wounds deleted, close bracket. Now, what she said about the wounds, we don't know. The fact is this. Not one word of the testimony, of the transcript, of the testimony given by any of the witnesses is available to be seen. You cannot see the transcript. What you can see is a printed version published by the Commission. But if you look at Volume 1 of the evidence, there are 15 volumes of testimony. If you look in Volume 1, it states that the commission reserved the right to edit the transcript, make those minor changes. In editing the transcript, it said, in order to improve, now get this phrase, in order to improve the clarity and the accuracy of the witness's testimony. So we have an improved version available to us. What the old, ordinary, unproved version might be in the transcripts, we don't know. Whether there are basic changes or not, we don't know. But I do know this, that one important witness to one of the aspects of the case revolving around Jack Ruby was a lady named Nancy Perrin Rich. Mrs. Rich testified that she worked for Jack Ruby. He was a bartender for him, that he knew over half of the Dallas Police Force, that he was involved in illegal, corrupt activities with the Dallas Police Force over a period of time in Dallas, that he made liquor available to them, girls available to him, and he was involved in gambling. He was the bagman for the underworld and paid off the Dallas police. And many, many witnesses said exactly the same thing. She was not the only one. She also told about a very important meeting she said took place. It was a group of people who were involved in sending guns to Cuba after Castro was premier, evidently an anti-Castro activity because they were going to smuggle volunteers out. And she told this story to the commission, and it seemed a rather incredible story, except many of the elements of her story are corroborated independently by others. She said Jack Ruby walked into that meeting, and he appeared to have a big bulge in his pocket. There was a shortage of money. He went into the room with an American Lieutenant Army Colonel in the back room, and then he came out, and he didn't have the bulge anymore, and all of a sudden, all of the money, $25,000, appeared to have been available. And various aspects of this, as I say, are corroborated by what the witnesses said. She said she was then, and that's the way it's published. Now, of course, in the testimony, there's no reference at all to the fact that she saw any guns or any such thing. But when I questioned her, because that's the way the commission published it, when I questioned her, I have this on film and on tape, she told me that, and then she said, and I also told them that this lieutenant colonel and others took me down into the warehouse near that apartment building, and there I saw a pile of arms which amazed me, hand grenades, rifles, machine guns, etc. And she said, when I said that, the attorney for the commission said, that's off the record, he said to the stenographer. And when she examined the printed transcript of what it is she said, none of that material was present there at all. Now, there are many statements running throughout the testimony, off the record. For example, Marina Oswald testified when shown a photograph, Commission Exhibit 5 it's called, a photograph of General Walker's house, which the commission and Marina said was taken by Lee Harvey Oswald. The commission, of course, said that Oswald took a shot at General Walker as well, and this was part of the proof. But in the photograph, there's an automobile, very clearly visible, and there's a hole right in the middle of the back of the automobile where the license plate would ordinarily be. Marina Oswald said, when this picture was first shown to me by agents of the FBI, there was no hole there. There was a license plate. It had black and white numbers and letters. And then when the commission showed it to me, there was a license plate with black and white letters and numbers. What I'd like to know, she said, is why did somebody find out who tore a hole in this photograph after the commission had it? Counsel said, off the record. And we don't know what transpired, but we know when they did come back on the record, there was no discussion of that matter again. Perhaps the matter was clarified to the concern of the commission lawyer who was there. But this, I believe, was Mr. Jenner, wasn't it? Mr. Liebler? Oh, fine, then maybe you'll tell us about how it happened that you stopped discussing. Yeah, tell us right now. I'd like to hear that.
This whole discussion, and we're going to focus on the license plate, is a discussion of why some material appears, why off-the-record conversations appear, or why the notation off-the-record appears in the printed version. Marina Oswald did ask why, as I recall it, why somebody wasn't trying to find out how this hole got in the picture. And that's exactly what I was trying to do. The first thing I was trying to establish is whether or not that hole or that black spot appeared in that picture when the commission first showed that document to Marina. I had no way of knowing whether it had or not because I wasn't present at the time and there was no reference to it or mention of it in the testimony that Marina first gave to the commission. So obviously the first thing that had to be done was to find out whether or not the hole was poked in the picture at the time Marina was first shown the picture. Now Marina testified, and that's all that Marina could testify about this presumably, particularly in view of the fact that she testified that the hole wasn't there. So obviously she couldn't tell us anything about how it got there because it wasn't there when she turned it over to the FBI. It apparently got there sometime later, or it was a different picture, or in fact it was a photograph. The thing that I had before at that time was a photograph of the picture that apparently she'd been shown, because the hole wasn't actually in the photograph. There was just a black mark there which showed that the picture had been gouged out at some point along the line so that the license plate was obliterated. Now, isn't that right, Mr. Lane? That's right. Now, what I was trying to find out was how it got there, how the hole got in the photograph, why or how the license plate was obliterated. And this was the preliminary basis of trying to do it, to find out from Marina whether it was there at the time she testified before the commission. She said it wasn't, and we went on from there trying to find out how the hole got there. I'm very sorry to have to say that I was not able to find out how the hole did get there. I don't recall what the off-the-record conversation was at the time, but it had nothing to do with any... I don't recall I was off the record, because I'll tell you that it was not off the... All right. I'll tell you it was not off the record. Out of any... There are all kinds of reasons why lawyers go off the record. Her lawyer interrupted and wanted to make some remarks, and talked about it, and I don't recall whether it was I who asked it to go off the record, or Marina, or him, or any of the kind. But I can tell you this, that the reason that we went off the record, I don't remember what it was, it had nothing whatever to do with any... Just a minute. It had nothing whatever to do with any attempt to suppress any evidence of anything. Now, at this point, there are two ways in which that. Well, at this point, there's no way in which that question could be answered, because even if you opened the original transcript in the archives, it wouldn't show what the conversation off the record was.
Can I just read the testimony here so that so there's no dispute about this?
Now look, Mr. Lane went on at length speaking about this. Now I'm going to say this. I came over here with the understanding that I would have the opportunity to respond to him, and I want to respond. Now, if Mr. Lane doesn't want to debate these issues, I'm going to withdraw from this conversation. I didn't come over here to listen to Mr. Lane. I've heard him before, and I want to make my statement about it, or I'm going to leave. And if you don't let me make my statement, all I can do is accuse you of bad faith in getting me over here and coming over here. You told me that I'd have access to the microphone, and I've got it. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to explain that regardless of the headline, the article of the Daily Bruin, as I wrote down the conversations, as I remember the conversations that I had with Professor Liebler, Mr. Liebler expressed interest in coming here when he heard that Mr. Lane was going to be here, and I told him that I would be most pleased to let him ask first, because of his background in this, and has asked his questions, and I would like. I don't think this is Mark, do you have any comment on this?
If I don't get a chance to speak, and if we don't get a moderator here who's a moderator, I'm going to withdraw. I issue my challenge for Mr. Lane to debate. If he wants to debate, let him debate. If not, I'm not going to hear any concern what he has. That's all I do is that.
I wish.
Moderator. He's sitting right over there.
Mr. Liebler. May I?
Bill? Ms. Weaver?
All right, so let's I wonder if it's possible to say anything here.
You've been doing pretty well.
Yes. This is remember that courtesy game we were going to play?
Yeah, right.
Okay. This is. I must tell you this. I was invited here to speak. Now, come on. Despite the activities of some, I'll always remember UCLA as a very courteous place. I was invited here by the student body to speak. I assumed that the invitation was offered in good faith. I have now indicated, when I just discovered today that Mr. Liebler would like to debate, that I should be very pleased to debate with Mr. Liebler. I will be here in Los Angeles until Tuesday. I'm sure that we can arrange a debate. I have a radio program to do in 20 minutes. I would rather not give up that radio program in order to answer the challenge now issued on this floor by Mr. Liebler. So I have other responsibilities as well. If Mr. Liebler and Mr. Levine and others can arrange a date, I shall be happy to engage.
This will be set.
When? That's good.
I shall be happy to arrange. Excuse me.
And Germany will be the moderator.
Well, Mr. Liebler, you're not really running the whole operation, are you? I mean, I know these are just students here and you're a professor. And I know that, but it's like having a witness before you. But let's allow the student body to work out any regulation it wants or any it wants. I'll be happy to debate. I beg your pardon? Yes, I'd like to. I don't want to make any more comment. I want to read to you exactly what the transcript is so we can refresh Mr. Liebler's recollection of the examination which he conducted. I make reference now to volume 26, page 451 of the volumes of evidence. And this is the exact testimony with Mr. Liebler conducting the examination. Question: who showed you the picture? The FBI or the Secret Service or the Commission? Question by Mr. Liebler. Marina Oswald: the FBI first and then the Commission. Question: now at the time the Commission showed you the picture in Washington, was there a hole shown in the picture where the car's license plate would be? Marina Oswald: no. I don't know what happened to this picture, because when the Commission showed me the picture, there was not this spot there. If there was a hole, I would have asked them right away why that hole is there, or the black spot. Question: off the record, please. And that's the end of any reference to the photograph. I think it's unfortunate that it is off the record, and Mr. Liebler doesn't recall precisely what happened. If it had been on the record, and the transcript revealed what took place, then we would not have to rely upon Mr. Liebler's memory or anyone else's memory to find out how the investigation was conducted. It would be right there, and we would know how it was conducted. That's the problem, I think, with off-the-record statements.
Now, do you want to do some
Sure.
All right. Yes, right there.
Yeah. I'll repeat the question if you don't hear it, if I hear it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What? Who agrees with that? Oh. I don't recall agreeing to that. Yes. Yes, there is, a great deal. I've discussed that at some length inside. Regarding the puff of smoke from the powder which you say doesn't smoke, anything made after World War I doesn't smoke. I'm not an expert on rifles. I did, however, read the 26 volumes. The Commission asked the FBI to test this German Mannlicher Italian Carpano rifle from Mauser. And the FBI sent a letter to the Commission, signed by J. Edgar Hoover. And the letter said that when this rifle is fired, even in broad daylight, puffs of white smoke are visible from it. They spell visible V-I-S-A-B-L-E, but we got the point anyway. Yes.
There'll be time for 3 more questions, as Mr. Lane has a radio appointment. So please speak up loud, and he'll try to repeat the question.
Well, he didn't testify at his own trial. Of course, he said he wanted to, but that decision, he said, was made by his attorney, and that's perfectly proper for the attorney to use great influence in determining whether the client should testify. So I won't discuss his testimony at his own trial. That's his own business. Regarding his testimony before the Commission, he testified twice, both in the jail in Dallas. And when he testified, he said to the Chief Justice, who went down there to question him, he said, if you can take me out of Dallas, get me to Washington, I will tell you the truth about what took place here. He indicated he was afraid for his life, and he made it plain he wasn't talking about the judicial sentence of death, but he had other reasons, he indicated, for fearing for his life if he testified in that Dallas jail. He said, just take me to Washington. And then Congressman Ford asked, I think somewhat redundantly, well, if we got you to Washington, could you give us some information that you can't give us here? After Ruby just said that for about 15 minutes. And He said, yes, please take me to Washington. The Chief Justice said, well, we have to break for lunch in a little while, and then we have to go back to Washington, and we cannot take you with us. And I might add this, he said, if I were in your spot, and maybe he was talking about the fact that Ruby's case was on appeal. I don't know what he meant. I'm not sure Ruby knew either. He said, if I were in your spot, I would give some serious consideration to whether or not I want to testify, whether or not it would harm me. So, Mr. Ruby, I want you to feel perfectly free, this is a quote, I think, to terminate this interview at any time you please. I think that was a rather incurious approach to take, considering that the one man who was being questioned was the one man who survived of the known principles. President Kennedy is dead, Officer Tippit is dead, Lee Harvey Oswald is dead. Just Jack Ruby of the known principles survives and may have a wealth of information, but he was never permitted to go to Washington and testify. Yes, sir. Yes. Well, right. Okay. Let me just say this. Mr. Spector deals with that. If you want the Warren Commission's response, I think the most eloquent response to that for the Commission is in U.S. News and World Report, and I would suggest you read it. You have. Then I'll comment on it. I believe President Kennedy was shot from the back. We didn't have a chance to go into it. I say that in the book. I believe Governor Connolly was shot from the back also. I believe also there's overwhelming evidence that there were shots from the front, from behind that wooden fence, which leads me to conclude that at least two people were firing because it would have been impossible for both to have fired. One man to have fired, obviously, at the same time from two different places. Now, if there was a bullet in the president's back, that would be an extra bullet which cannot be explained. At one time, it was the position of the government, Secret Service, FBI, etc., in their public statements, even when they posed the pictures with chalk on their back, that there was a mark in the back. The 14 centimeters, I think, comes up higher, actually, than the dot shown on the scale. But Dr. Humes did draw a dot and put it not at the neck, not at the base of the neck, but in the back. The FBI submitted a report to the Commission on December 9th, and this, I think, is an indication of what I meant earlier at the press conference, which seems to have concerned Mr. Liebler so much, about the deliberate deception in which the Commission was involved. The Commission talks about a series of reports being given to it by the FBI and the Secret Service, and says, I think, of primary importance, of great importance, of importance, some words indicating its significance, is the report of December 9th, 1963. And you can go through that volume, 888 pages, you never see another reference to it. Why was it important? What did it say? Well, they never told us. And they never published it in the 26 volumes either. If you spent the $76 and bought the 26 volumes, and you bought the Warren Commission report, it still wouldn't be available to you. But later on, it was made available in the National Archives. And this is what that says, that there was a wound in the back, that it did not, the wound in the throat obviously could not have been an exit wound because the wound was in the back below the point. And it's an impossible hypothesis, obviously. The shots came from above, entered in the back, somehow came up to the throat, then went down again to Governor Connolly. Even the Commission, I think, would not be willing to suggest that that took place. And so we have the statement, the informal statement made by Mr. Hoover, well, the agents must have been careless, or maybe they didn't hear it when they quoted the doctors. Now, just declassified somewhat recently, is this Commission exhibit. I think it's called 7 in the archives. This is a statement signed by two FBI agents, Siebert and O'Neill. This is page 284 of the report. Describing what they saw when they were present in the autopsy room. During the latter stages of this autopsy, Dr. Humes located an opening which appeared to be a bullet hole which was below the shoulders and 2 inches to the right of the middle line. The opening was probed by Dr. Humes with the finger, at which time it was determined that the trajectory of the missile entered a point of downward position of 45 to 60 degrees. Further probing determined that the distance traveled by this missile was a short distance, inasmuch as the end of the opening could be felt with the finger. And the report goes on to say they couldn't find the bullet in the president's back. And there was no point of exit. The quote, there was no point of exit. So they said, what could have happened to the bullet? It didn't come out and it didn't stay in. And they reached the hypothesis after they were told that a bullet was found on a stretcher in Parkland Hospital, an almost pure, pristine bullet, which had less than 3 grains of metal missing from it. This information was given to Dr. Humes. Immediately following receipt of this information, this was made available to Dr. Humes, who advised that, in his opinion, this accounted for no bullet being located, which had entered the back region, and that since external cardiac massage had been performed at Parkland Hospital, it was entirely possible that through such movement, the bullet had worked its way back out of the point of entry and fallen on the stretcher. And then the two agents go on to conclude as follows. On the basis of the latter developments, Dr. Humes stated that the pattern was clear. The doctor performing the autopsy, Dr. Humes, stated the pattern was clear, that the one bullet had entered the president's back and had worked its way out of the body during external cardiac massage. So into the back, worked its way out, but when the final report was issued, when it was necessary after examining the Zapruder films to prove that, because Connolly was seen reacting within less than 2 seconds to the bullet the president allegedly was hit by, a frame established by the commission, it would have been impossible. That rifle required 2.3 seconds just to work the bolt, said the FBI. And so an inventive theory was required to explain why the governor was reacting less than 2 seconds after the president. The bullet wound was raised, at least from the point shown on the Dr. Humes chart. His papers had been burned, the photographs, the x-rays no one's allowed to look at, and now the bullet went up here, and there was in fact a point of exit which wasn't available at the time, and it's at the throat, and although the doctors could only probe the end of it with their finger before, now they discovered it went all the way through. Well, I think the photographs are very important. I think it's unfortunate that the commission never saw it. It was its responsibility to examine it. It was responsibility of the council, which was working in this area, to examine. I'm not sure if the photographs at this time are decisive. I think there's so much more. And there's so much more other evidence that I think should be available to us that I would not be satisfied with just that material now. But I think it certainly was required of any commission which was conducting an examination. And just one more question. Yeah. One. No, I don't know what the picture shows. I don't know if it shows it. What? Oh, why do I make a statement to indicate that nobody was in the window? I never said nobody was in the window. I said I'd like to look at the picture, and I believe the picture showed Lee Harvey Oswald standing up there alone firing. The commission would have published it as the cover of its report, because that's its whole case. But the commission, you look disgruntled. Let me ask you this, sir. Would you like to see that picture? Are you concerned that your government has not let you see the picture? It's in their hands? Oh, well, you take it. I expect that. I really expect that response from the press and from the media in general. Excuse me, gentlemen. But it really is surprising to hear a student shrug off the fact the government probably destroyed it. But there's a young lady back there who had her hand up. That's the last question. Well, I think I hope this will come up at the debate because Mr. Liebler probably has a better view of that than I do. As far as I'm concerned, I have no inside information. I just have to rely upon the facts. There's no indication as to why that was. I said to you earlier in the other room that the first press conference indicated that the commission had reached its conclusion before it took any evidence. And in fact, the book written by Congressman Ford appears to confirm that. Let me give you one example of some other material in that book by Congressman Ford. Mr. Rankin, counsel for the commission, reports to the first meeting of the commission. Now, this material is not in the National Archives. It's not available to anybody, but Congressman Ford had it, and in order, when he submitted his book to Simon & Schuster, which is about Oswald's psychological background, it's a rehash of all that material the commission had, they weren't too interested in the book, and so he promised him something secret. So from his drawer, he took out the minutes of the first meeting of the commission, never published anywhere, and that's his first chapter. That's an interesting chapter, I'll say that for his book. And in it says, Mr. Rankin, counsel for the commission, came to this tense and hushed meeting, as Congressman Ford describes it. And at that meeting, he said, Henry Wade, the Dallas district attorney, and Wagner Carr, the attorney general of Texas, have said that Oswald was an informant of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that his number was, I think, 174, 179, assigned to him. I mean, they were specific. I don't recall which number it was. Assigned to him by the FBI. that Oswald was an informant who was paid $200 a month by the FBI, and he was on the payroll when he assassinated the president. That was what Rankin said. The Attorney General of Texas and the District Attorney of Dallas had told him. And this is the only information before the commission on this score now. They've taken no evidence at all. And then the transcript reveals what takes place. Mr. Rankin says, this is a dirty rumor, and this must be destroyed by the commission at whatever cost. Now, there's no evidence yet. Just the report of the Dallas District Attorney and the Attorney General of Texas, and it's already a dirty rumor which must be destroyed. And the whole tenor of the discussion, in terms of counsel for the commission, indicated a desire to wipe out this dirty rumor before it was anything more than an allegation, which may have been accurate for all we know. But they said, the members of the commission showed more spunk than that. They said, we take our responsibilities seriously. This was said by Senator Cooper and Senator Russell and others. And they said, we're going to look at this material very closely. We're going to find out who the source is. And it was brought out the source is Lonnie Hutkins, a reporter for one of the newspapers. He's the one who was one of the... And they list 5 sources for the material, as I believe, 4 or 5. And they said, Ford said, this was going to be a test. Would we take the word of the FBI or conduct our own independent investigation? This would be a test of the commission, said Congressman Ford in his book. And then he concludes, never was a crime examined more thoroughly in the history of the world. Then you put down Congressman Ford's book, and you pick up the testimony. Not one of the 4 or 5 people referred to as the sources were ever questioned by the Warren Commission or by counsel for the commission. It was a test. And the fact is, when I was on the radio program with Mr. Jenner, I read to him a cable which is published in volume 18 of the report, Commission Exhibit 917, which is a cable from the American Embassy in Moscow to the FBI, CIA, State Department, and Commander of the Marine Corps, November 3rd, 1959. And it says, Lee Harvey Oswald, former Marine, and 41 letters, or 43 letters, deleted. Can't see what it is. Former Marine and star of stage, screen, and radio. What was the description? What was the description? I was on the radio program, the Jerry Williams program in Chicago with Mr. Jenner, and I showed that. We went on to say that we have been informed that Oswald has stated that he would give secret information, some information about United States radar, Marine Corps radar, to the Soviet Union. That's the government story then. That's what they thought about Oswald in 59. And come back to the United States, should he not be arrested? If the government thought he gave information about radar, the Russians, shouldn't he be arrested? Not arrested. Went down to New Orleans, applied for a passport, got it in 24 hours. Took me 8 days, the normal course of events. Nobody gets it in 24 hours without a special effort being made. Possibly anybody can if a special effort is made. But Oswald was brought back. The government paid his way because he had no money. Therefore, he should not have gotten just on those grounds. He had defected to the Soviet Union, said he wanted to give up his American citizenship, become a Soviet citizen, was charged by the government with giving information to the enemy, or to the Soviet Union, our Cold War enemy. And what happened when he came back? No arrest, but he was given his passport. So I said to Mr. Jenner, you said, and he said it up, Mr. Liebler denies that Mr. Jenner had this authority, but Mr. Jenner is a senior attorney and said on tape that he was the person in charge of determining Oswald's background, that he dealt with questions of Oswald's connections with others, conspiracy, etc. And I said to Mr. Jenner, what are those 41 missing letters? Lee Harvey Oswald, former Marine, and what are those 41 letters that have been deleted? And he said, I don't know. I said, but you were in charge of this area, you said. He said, yes, I was. I said, you've assured us that Oswald was in no way associated with the government as an agent or anything else. Don't you have an abiding curiosity to know what those 41 letters were? And he said, no, I don't. I have faith in those who removed those 41 letters. Yeah, one second. And I said, last sentence, and I said, Mr. Jenner, who removed the 41 letters? And he said, I don't know.
I would like to
Sorry,
thank...
I must go, but we'll be back here for a debate in the next 3 or 4 days.
We'd like to thank Mr. Lane for being here. Those of you who have had your curiosity stirred by his presentation or questions about it, there are definite source materials, one of them being his book. A debate will be arranged on this topic between these gentlemen. Please watch for notice of that. Thank you again.